Today I'm going to do something I've wanted to do for a very long time, and that is try and run my entire van off of one single solar generator. This is the Bluetti AC200 Max, and the one thing this has got that no other solar generator has got is a 12 volt 30 amp outlet, and that is where I'm going to connect this solar generator to the entire electrical system inside my van. Now this is the cable that I'm going to be using. You do have to buy this as an optional extra. It doesn't come with the AC200 as standard. The only thing that does worry me about this, or concern me, is there's no fuse between the box and my main fuse box. But then the main fuse box is just basically a box of fuses, so if anything was to go wrong then the fuses in here should blow. But I'm kind of guessing that this has got a built-in safety feature as well, so if there is any overload then the AC200 Max will actually cut the power going to my fuse box. And for that reason I'm not actually going to fit a fuse between this and my fuse box. I think that might be a bit of an overkill. Okay, first thing to do, actually cut this off. See how thick those wires are. They don't look very thick, these wires. Look how thin these are, considering this has got to power my entire van. You know what, I've given this some thought, and look how thin these wires are. They really are thin. And to think I'm going to put my fridge through this, and my diesel heater and my ceiling fan all at the same time, I think this could be a bit of a fire risk. I wouldn't recommend anyone to do this, so I'm not going to do it myself. So what I'm going to do is cut this plug off of this lead and see how thick the wires are inside this cable. And at the end of the day, this van is actually my home, and the last thing I want to do is create any kind of fire hazard. So I'm going to cut this plug off and then wire this directly into my fuse panel. I think that's probably a wise choice. Let's see how thick the cable is inside this. Let's hope it's a lot thicker. That's more like it. That's a lot thicker now. It doesn't look much thicker on camera. If I hold them up together you can see there is quite a big difference. Not a lot, but I think I'd rather go with this than this. So I've stripped it back. I've put a little bit of heat shrink on here just to try and make it a little bit neater and to smarten it up a little bit so we don't get any nasty frayed edges. I think it'll look much better like this. You know, we want it to look nice and neat. Like that. Just heat shrink it on. There you go, it looks better. It's better than just a rough edge, I think. So this is what my modified cable looks like. You can see I've got the standard plug this end and these two eyelets on the other end. Black wire goes to the earth or the ground on my van, and then the red cable is going to go to the main red cable or main power cable of my fuse box. Then I can plug this into the Bluetti AC200 Max, switch it on and see if it can power my van. Okay, so my AC200 Max is now plugged into my main fuse box, although it's not switched on. But if I flick this switch here, my main battery bank will now be disconnected from my main fuse box. So if I switch this on now, wait for it to boot up, hopefully this is going to work. Now remember what happened when I was experimenting with the 12 volt TV. Everything kind of went a little bit bang. So let's hope that we don't have a repeat of that. So if I turn the DC on, my lights should all come back on again. There you go. And we are drawing 40 watts. Oh, 10 amps. 30 watts. Oh yeah, my fridge. So my fridge here. Let's turn this on. Let's open the fridge up. So that cuts in. Right, the fridge is now running. Let's turn my diesel heater on. Hang on. Let's get my controller. Oh, that's handy. It's a blazing hot day and I'm about to turn on my diesel heater just to see what happens. Let's turn this on. Going to get hot in here. And also I'm going to turn my ceiling fan on as well. Fan, fresh water pump. I'm going to switch everything on, all my charging ports. Let's switch those on as well. Switch the fan on. Let's Turn that on. Let's have it blowing in, shall we? Full power. There we go. Oh, switch those lights on. Let's turn everything on we can. Possibly fine. Just to see what happens. Right, I think I've got just about everything switched on now. Wait for my diesel heater to kick in. Oh, internal. Well, my little camera overheated and switched off, so I've had to change cameras to my GoPro. Poor little ZV-E10 just got too hot. So yeah, I've had to switch it off. Never mind, good job I got my GoPro. Anyway, the fan is running. You can probably hear my diesel heater cranking up now. Got my fridge door open, got all my lights on. Just about everything I can think of is switched on, and we are drawing, let's have a look, 100 watts. It's not many, is it? I thought it'd be more than that. It did peak at 200 watts. And we was drawing at one point 200 watts. That's just my gas alarm kicking in as well. It's now dropped down to 120 watts, which is a lot less than I thought it would be. Anyway, just goes to show that this unit can handle it, but I'm really surprised that it's only literally, it peaked at 200 watts. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm going to let it run for about an hour if I can stand the heat, because it is rather warm in here. And then I'm going to just check these wires, make sure they're not getting warm. I think it should be perfectly fine. And then if it is, I will now connect up, or try and connect up, my alternator and my solar power to charge this unit. And if this works, then I'm going to get rid of my AGM batteries, and I've got 4 of those, and those AGM batteries weigh about 23 kilos each, I think, from memory. So I'm really pleased. I'm going to save a ton of money in fuel, because my van will be a lot lighter, over 100 kilos lighter in fact. Mind you, I've got this as well added to it, so it won't be 100 kilos, will it? It'll be minus whatever my batteries are, plus this, which is 28 kilos, I think. Look, there goes the diesel heater, it's kicking in, and it's getting really hot now. And just as a matter of fact, it is actually 29 degrees outside, and I'm in my van with my diesel heater on. I think I'm going to have to turn it off, I'm afraid. I can't handle this. It's way too hot in here. But if all I draw at a maximum is 200 watts, then I'm pretty pleased with that. That's really good news. And just to show that I'm not cheating, I shall switch this off, and you'll probably hear the fan go off. And the lights go off as well. There you go, my entire van is running off the Bluetti AC200 Max. So all I need to do now is connect up the solar panel and the alternator, and then I really am committed to using this to power my entire van. All I've got to do is figure out how to do it. Can't be that hard, can it? So to connect up the solar, it's really simple. I've just disconnected the solar panel cables from my Ring DC to DC charge controller. 4 connectors, they simply plug into here. That's the negative, that's the positive, and then the other end of this cable goes into the DC connector on the Bluetti. So if I plug this in now, we should get a charge. I think I've got that going the right way, yeah. Now the thing with the Bluetti is you do have to actually switch it on for it to start working and charging. So slide that over there like that. Oh, I've switched it on already, it's still on. There you go, we've got 125 watts going in now. 124, that's not a lot considering I've got a 360 watt solar panel on the roof of my van and it is a scorching hot day. I'm really surprised by that. Still, it's charging, that's the main thing. Right, now alternator. Now to connect the alternator to this, just so happens, luckily, I've got an old split charge relay down here that I don't use, so I'm not going to use my Ring DC to DC charge controller. I was going to connect this up to this via the alternator because that's a smart charger, but because my van hasn't got a smart alternator, I can simply use a voltage sensing relay. It's a bit dusty, it's been there for a while, so that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to connect this up. And to do that I'll need this special adapter, and this plugs in where you would normally plug in the wall charger. So by plugging this into the other socket, that, and then the other end of this is going to plug into my split charge relay. When I start my van up, this will then charge the Bluetti via my alternator. And again, this is actually sold separately, so you have to buy one of these as a separate unit. Right, all I've got to do is find a cable. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, this is a voltage sensing relay. The other end of this cable is connected to my main starter battery on my van. So when I start the engine on my van and the alternator kicks in and starts charging my main battery, this will sense the higher voltage, switch itself on, and then via the other terminal in here, it will then send power from the alternator to my AC200 via the charging brick. And in that way I can have solar power going into my AC200 and power from my alternator, which means it should charge really quickly and I will never run out of power. Well, that's the idea anyway. Right, so all I've got to do now is it's a bit messy down here, is cut these two off of this, because this actually plugs into here. I'm going to cut these cables off and connect these cables to my voltage sensing relay. I'm going to cut these a little bit long. I want to leave these just hanging a little bit like this, and then these two I'm going to connect to my Ring DC to DC charge controller, so if ever I do have a problem with this unit, I can simply unplug my solar panels and then reattach my solar panels to my Ring DC to DC charge controller, and by doing that I can then start to charge my original leisure batteries. Okay, so it's all connected up now. I've got solar power coming in at 137 amps. This is now connected up to my split charge relay, so when I start my engine it should, in theory, start charging this as well as the solar panels. Let's crank up the engine and see what happens. Just got to find my keys. Just stood on them, locked my door. Wowee, look at this. I've got 192 watts coming in from my alternator and 139 watts coming in from my solar panels. That's brilliant. It shouldn't take too long to charge this now when I'm driving, that's for sure. I'm really pleased with that. There you go, I think we'll call that a success. I'm still not that thrilled about the thickness of those wires going into this. Yeah, so I'm going to let this run for a little while and see how warm those wires get. Yeah, that's kicking in now. Brilliant. Well, seeing as though it's an incredibly hot day, I'm going to leave my van running. I'm going to shut my sliding door, crank up my aircon so it cools it down in here somewhat, and at the same time I can keep an eye on this and see if those cables do get hot, because I really don't like these really thin cables. They just seem, I don't know, alarm bells are ringing. So I'm going to leave my van running for a good hour, maybe even 2 hours. I'm just going to chill out, sit on my bed, do some work on my laptop, and at the same time keep an eye on this. So after all, this will be charging my laptop as I use it, and my engine and my solar panels are going to be charging it. Therefore we're going to be through charging. Yeah, let's shut that door, crank up my aircon, just see if this does get hot. I'll be back in about an hour's time. Let's have a look, see what the time is now, so you know I'm not cheating. Not that I think you would think that, but from your own reference as well. What's the time? There you go, it's exactly 4 minutes past 5. So let's see what happens at 6 o'clock. See if these wires get warm or not, and see if my aircon cools down my van or not as well. Right, back in about an hour. Well, my timer's run out. it's been an hour, it's at 97% charge. It's still pulling 180 watts from the alternator, and cables are still cold, so I'm really pleased with that. Yeah, just feel this all the way along. I mean, this is getting warm, like I said earlier, but cables, no, there's no warmth at all. The split charge relay, that's a little bit warm, but that's normal. They usually get hot because it's a magnetic coil in there. So yeah, the solar panels aren't getting hot at all, they're stone cold. And I think the only reason this feels warm up here is because the fan's blowing on it. The negative cable's stone cold. Yeah, we're at 97% charged. I don't see any problem with that. I'm still going to give it a thorough good testing first before I endorse this. I'm not even going to upload this video until I've had this wired up and connected for at least a couple of weeks, just to make sure that I'm not going to be responsible for anybody setting fire to their van. I would hate to have that on my conscience. Well, it's at 98% now, as you can see, and yeah, 2 more percent, and we'll see what happens when it reaches fully charged. Will this just switch off? Will the solar panels just switch off? So let's see what happens when it gets to 100%. Will it stop charging? Will this just simply shut off, or will it carry on running? I'm going to leave the van running though, just to see what happens, just try and simulate what would happen once it's fully charged and I carry on driving. Interesting. Because of the time of day now, it's 6:10 in the evening. The solar panel's only pulling out 63 watts. But the alternator, like I say, that's still chucking out 181 watts, so it shouldn't be long before this actually reaches 100%. I'll let you know when we get there. Whilst I've been sitting here waiting, I've been playing with the app, and I've discovered something. This is really cool. Okay, so remember me saying that the DC was from the alternator is pulling 186 watts, and it still is. But watch what happens when I turn the DC off. Apart from the lights going out, so it will go dark because I'm going to turn it off. Now when I'm driving my van, generally I have everything switched off, right? So it is now drawing just over 100 watts. Look at that. And this is what it's drawing from the alternator. So it's only drawing, turn it back on again, 186 watts when everything in my van is switched on. And remember, I've got my ceiling fan on as well. Well, I did have. It would have turned off now. Interesting. Although I'm only drawing 37 watts, and that fluctuates because of my fridge, the actual input draw has gone up to 191 watts now. Fascinating. If I turn it off, it goes right down to, yeah, just over 100 watts. And also, oh, I'm disconnected now. Hang on, let me turn the light back on. Switch it back on. And another thing I've noticed as well, the wires aren't actually getting hot. These wires aren't getting hot at all, and I'm really surprised. I really thought that especially this cable coming from the alternator was going to get warm, but it's not. It's actually cold to touch. Bearing in mind I've got my aircon going flat out. And the solar cable as well, it's stone cold, and that's laying on the floor. So it looks like my fears and worries were unnecessary, I suppose. But this has got a fan in it. The fan has been going the entire time, and it does smell hot, and it has actually got hot air coming out of it as well. You can feel the warm air coming out of this. That is a concern. But I don't know. Maybe what I'm going to do is actually, when I put all this and put it all back together, put everything away, I'm going to quickly pop down and get a smoke alarm to put underneath here, just in case. I think it'll be a wise thing to do is to actually fit a smoke alarm up under here, around here somewhere, so if anything does get hot, hopefully that smoke alarm will pick it up. So this does smell hot. It smells like Scalextrics, but not as bad. I must admit, it's not that bad. Yeah, it doesn't smell so bad now. Now it's been going for a little while, the smell has subsided. Maybe it's because it's new. But yeah, it had kind of a Scalextrics car smell about it. The cable's still stone cold and it's almost charged, and it hasn't taken an hour. It's 96% charged now. I'm really pleased with that, really pleased. Right, I think I'll give it another hour. Well, 2 hours later, it's still at 98% charged. Maybe that's as high as it goes when it's in this condition. I am actually using it to charge my laptop as well now, and so it's drawing 133 watts DC, but it's fluctuating between 133 and 132 there. You can just see there. And yeah, I say it's been like that for about half an hour. Despite charging my laptop as well, it's holding the charge, so it's through charging. It's still cold. This little thin cable that is charging via, that's connected to my alternator. Surprisingly, it's not getting warm. So this has worked out really well. You can hear I've got my engine running. If you look at the Bluetti app, you can see the alternator is charging my Bluetti along with the solar panel. In fact, my Bluetti is now charged to 99%. But here's the thing, because I've got my leisure battery still connected up to my DC to DC charge controller, I'll show you what's going on here, and it is actually working. If I can hold the torch there, you can see that my Ring DC to DC charge controller is now topping up my dormant leisure battery that I've left in place. So this is the key that I need to connect up my leisure battery. It goes in this slot here, just under my table. Now if I unplug my Bluetti like this, and that mimics my battery going flat in the Bluetti, as you can see the fridge has gone off. So in this situation, if the Bluetti was ever to go completely flat, I simply now flick this switch and everything will come back on, because now my van is running off of my leisure battery rather than the Bluetti, just as a backup. It's worked out really well. I'm really pleased with that, and I already had all this wiring installed in my van anyway, so I thought why not use it just as a backup in case the Bluetti does ever fail. There you go, I can simply switch that off and then plug my Bluetti back in, and there you go, everything comes back on again, including my fridge. I'm super stoked at how well that's worked out. So now I can take my van away, I can go away for the next 3 or 4 weeks confident that I'm not going to run out of 12 volt power. I'm not so worried about the 240 volt side of things, because the only thing I use in my van that's 240 volt is my induction cooktop and my TV, and I also charge my e-bike using the 240 volt. Well, there you go, all that's left for me to do now is pack all my gear and hit the road and go off for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So if you like this video, then please do give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel, please do consider subscribing, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so when I do upload a video updating you on how I get on with the Bluetti running my van, you won't miss that video. So thanks for watching, and ta-ra for now.